Okay. Well, here we are. It's a little late in the day, actually. And we're on lesson number 307 of a workbook of A Course in Miracles. And remember, we're also looking at the section called The Second Coming. And of course, the Second Coming is correction of our perception, correction of the perception we've held of ourselves, of thinking we're something that we're not. And that sort of parallels this lesson a bit. And lesson 307 says, conflicting wishes cannot be my will. And I'm laughing because I'm just looking at the statement as it is. You know, we have, in the condition of being a human being in space and time, prior to recognizing the truth of who we are, Jesus talks about us as having a split mind. Our mind is split in that we think. This lesson is an indication of it. We think that there can be a will other than the will of God. And so our mind is split between thinking there can be a will and thinking there can't be a will. And in that, that's the sort of nature of the split in our mind, which means that there's some conflict there. We must be thinking or wishing for two separate things, and yet if there's only one single will, and that will... and the will of God is what love is, then there can't be anything opposite to love, because love as the entirety of the condition within which we were created, and what we were created to be, is all that there exists, and there being not a counter force in creation, in reality, in God, in that sense. So the idea that I could have a will that conflicts with God would be an indication that I think that conflict is possible. And if conflict is possible, the result of my thinking that conflict is possible must get played out within my heart and mind, or my bodily experience of myself. Okay? But Father, your will is mine, and only that. There is no other will for me to have. Let me not try to make another will, for it is senseless and will cause me pain. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. The idea that everything's true by the idea of it. So if we come up with an idea that there's something opposite to God's will, our mind must get the result of thinking that in the experience that we have of ourselves. The experience that we have of ourselves and finding ourselves in conflict is the admission that we believe that there are two wills. Okay, that is what must be settled in our mind by an experience that shows us that reality is singular, the nature of our creation is singular, whole, and perfect, and without any opposition. So that if we all share the single will, the same will of God, it has no ability to have conflict in it, nor could it produce, let's use the word wish for a second. It couldn't produce a wish that was not in line with the will of God, which was the power of your mind that you're utilizing to think. Okay? Let me not try to make another will, for it is senseless and will cause me pain. Your will alone can bring me happiness, and only yours exists. Okay, now, the idea behind us being offered this teaching isn't so that we can judge ourselves as being defective if we find ourselves in conflict. The idea in this lesson is to come to the understanding that if we are experiencing conflict within ourselves, then we are having wishes that are in that are not in alignment with the will of God. It's a way of seeing, the way of watching our thoughts, of utilizing our experience as a way of showing us or demonstrating to us what we are thinking or what our unconscious mind is holding that we have repressed and tried to hide from ourselves in order to convince ourselves of what the ego wants us to believe is real, so as to establish an identity and eventually think with the thought that if this identity is somehow going to bring us peace because it's going to be stable, and it's not. If I would have only what you give, only what you can give, I must accept your will for me and enter into peace where conflict is impossible. Okay, so obviously the state of mind wherein which conflicting wishes seem to cause you pain is an illusion of a reality and not your reality. Okay, the utilization of that understanding is the way we become cognizant of what we're really thinking, and gives us the material that we can turn over to the Holy Spirit and to Jesus in order to heal our mind of the idea that there can be another will of God and we could be separate from it, and worse yet, judged by God as not fulfilling His will. Okay, that's not a possibility, since there aren't this, how do I say this? Two-ness. Two-ness can't possibly exist, and yet thinking mind of the human being cannot understand the oneness of the kingdom, because the oneness of the kingdom seems to indicate the elimination of what it is it's led you to believe you are, which is what the lie is. Unified will brings about unified experience, which of course would not allow us to be in conflict with anything that's part of it, that shares the same will with us. And that's a theory that we can utilize as a light to look at what we're thinking and how we're feeling, in order to show us what there is within ourselves that needs to be healed in order for us enter silently into a state where conflict cannot come, because we join our will, our holy will, with God's in recognition they are but one. And that's what we're attempting to do. And the only way we're going to do that is through utilizing forgiveness to release from within our heart and mind and our thinking everything that could cause us to experience conflicting wishes, and think there's a way to go against the will of God. So we have a theory, we have experiences that stem from how the mind utilizes the theory, and we have a way of looking at the results of the utilization in a way that can heal us. Okay, now you're relieved of judgment, and now we can begin we begin to have these moments. We can begin to have moments where we share the wholeness of who we are and the love of who we are, and we experience the fact that if we do share that one will, conflict would be impossible. Now, conflict being an impossible state of affairs within the kingdom allows us to free ourselves from the idea that somewhere conflict is an indication that God is out to get us, rather than we have gotten ourselves into a dualistic dilemma that within space and time is not solvable, yet within our heart and mind is rectifiable by utilizing the light of these lessons as a way of looking at our thinking and our experience in order to have the fuel that fires our need to identify with the ego put out, so that we no longer come into positions that have the ability to distract us from the recognition of the singular nature of our reality, so that, as I'm looking for the line that we were talking about, so that we can understand that your will alone can bring me happiness and your will alone exists. Okay? What begins to happen is the fire of our existence begins to grow, or the ignition of that fire becomes part of the fulfillment of our recognition of what we are as love created us, rather than a condition that we attempt to rectify or satiate within a world that actually offers us nothing. Okay, so here we are, lesson 307. We're allowing ourselves to have a moment's contact with God, and in that contact we discover the nature of reality is single because it's all inclusive. And if it's all inclusive and we share one mind and one will, then conflict becomes impossible. Okay? Now, in that total state, we recognize ourselves, our brother, and our reality. With that new memory of our total state experienced, we now have a light to shine away that which has been thought of as real, but which has in fact caused us to avoid the experience of reality and the unified will, wherein which conflict is impossible. Okay, so, and of course, the whole idea here, and with this prayer, we silently enter into a state where conflict cannot come, because we join our holy will with God's in recognition they are but one. They are not but one in relationship to something or in comparison to something else. They are but one because there is nothing else to compare them to, because everything else is unreal and does not exist. Okay, so you know yourself that conflicting wills could never be your wish, because you don't want to be in conflict. It's really that simple. And the way to recognize, and the way to not be in conflict, is to identify with the single, whole, perfect, all-inclusive will that is shared wholly by you, me, and all of our brothers. And here, because we're in a condition of having forgot about it, we're in a condition of thinking our mind is split, we're utilizing everything within our experience to help us remember the truth of who we are and free us from that which has never been true, which seemed to have taken the place of the truth for an instant. Okay? It's not about a discussion of it, it's about simply enter into a state that's already been there, because you freed yourself from the need from the thoughts that there's anything in the world, anything within the world of space and time that you need do in order to please God. You know, the drive to be a good boy or a good girl, thinking that you're going to be rewarded for your efforts, or the idea that there's something to protect because God's going to take away what He's given you if you misuse it. When we violate the thinking in our own mind, it is us that shut down the flow of abundance, us that shuts down the flow and experience of love. It's not God's, because we must get the result of our thinking, because that's the nature of our creation. The result of our creation is desire for God to share His will totally in a condition of harmony and love, in order to increase, in order to expand, in order to share. That is the nature of who we are. Okay? Now, here in space and time, many of us attempt to do this at the expense of others and find ourselves suffering. Okay? The way that we do this is by not knowing how to do it, and yet seeing obviously what we want to do. We want to share, we want to be whole, we want to be perfect, we want to recognize our brother as such, because we don't want to be in conflict. Okay, the idea that we've not been able to achieve these states before, based on the nature of anything we've been doing or trying to accomplish within space and time, should give us a key that we don't know how to do it. Then with the admission that we don't know how, we can simply begin to ask for help. And if you truly want help, help will be there. You'll get the direct guidance that you want. If you don't, it's because you don't really want help. You want what you want, not the help that's available that would come from what should I say it? The totality of the single, whole, perfect mind of creation to only want to share itself through every single decision. Now, a human mind would not know how to do that, but a human mind, or you or me, who at least entertains the willingness to let that be so, can then, in an open-minded frame, in opening your mind to a possibility that is not within the possibilities that exist within your own understanding, and this is what Jesus is talking about, and this will be tomorrow's lesson, as a matter of fact. You must open your mind to a possibility that is beyond all possibilities that you've ever thought, yet includes a solution to everything to all things all at once. So obviously it is an all-inclusive solution. We call it the Holy Spirit, of course. And the Holy Spirit is God's answer to our thought that there is another will other than His. So when we free ourselves from the thinking that we know what we're talking about, and we know what we're doing, we can begin to have that experience and allow that experience to inform us as to how to live life here. Now, thank the Lord that midterm marks are not recorded on the permanent record, because we all are very fallible here, and if you're like me, you make mistakes all the time. But you should be far along enough in your own experience and awakening when you recognize that the making of the mistakes is part of the process of the correction and the healing of your mind. If that makes any sense. You can't have a correction without the admission of the mistake, and you can't experience the mistake unless you're in a relationship with something that demonstrates the ability for something other than what you expect to happen, so that you can see that something's askew here. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's sort of late. But conflicting wishes are not your will. They've never been your will, and you've known that. You've just not known how to deal with the conflict that you experience in yourself. Because in one situation you may have a wish for one thing, and in another situation you seem to wish for something that's entirely opposite. It's only because underlying the wishes that you're making is the desire for everyone to be happy, and in one situation happiness seems to be available in one way, and in another situation it may be available another way. But it's always fleeting when it's thought that a human way can produce happiness. When we begin to allow ourselves to experience happiness because of the nature of who we are in reality, as whole and perfect and created by love to share joy as an eternal infinite state, we can begin to allow that condition to shine through into the world of space and time, rather than think that the world of space and time has something to offer us that can make us happy and can end the conflict and introduce peace into us. Peace is an attribute of you and I, because peace is an attribute of God's mind. In order to experience that peace, we must give up everything that conflicts with that peace. The truth is, nothing really conflicts with that peace, but we've given meaning to nothing and suffer from that, the giving of the meaning to nothing. Okay? Just because our mind has been split and conflicting wishes seem to be possible and desirable. We've matured to the spot where we look at the idea of, why would I want conflict? If there's anything I'm wishing for, I'm wishing for it because it's going to bring me happiness. So if all my wishes are for happiness, then happiness must be available to me through everything, but not in the form, but in what's behind the form. When we give up the form, when we stop thinking that the form is what determines the outcome of the situation. Okay, rather than, in a sense, the state of mind that we're utilizing as a form, in a sense. Okay? Utilize, we don't have to analyze. We can utilize the world of space and time to aid and abet our awakening and the awakening of all the world. And that's ultimately where the joy is going to be, because unless we're all happy, ultimately none of us are going to be happy, because we all share one mind, and we are in a sense joined in a way where that we share the wholeness and the love of our creation. And when we begin to allow ourselves to do that and offer that to everyone, rather than a form or temporary solution, we will begin to see that behind everyone's wish is the desire to be happy, and yet the need to wish for happiness is also the admittance that I'm not happy. And in that recognition that I'm not happy, but I would like to be happy, but I've not known how to allow that to occur and not lose that joy. Something new can open up and be shown to you by that which has been given to us to help us heal the split in our mind and bring us into an experience of shared, whole, perfect harmony and love.